Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Reva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Yapyat Sarvam Trilokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata Chapita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhu Shasakha Tvameva Tvameva Vidya Dravinam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Yata sarvani bhutani pratibhanti stitani cha yatraivo pashamam yanti tasmai satyatmane namaha. And happy Shivaratri to you all. So in honor of it, let's chant the Triambakam 3 times together, for those of you who know it. Triambakam yajamahe sugandhim pushti vardhanam urdvarukami bhabandanat mrityor mukshi amamritat. Triambakam yajamahe sugandhim pushti vardhanam Urdvarukami bhabandanat mrityor mukshi amamritata. Triambakam yajamahe sugandhim pushti vardhanam Urdvarukami bhabandanat mrityor mukshi amamritata. So that's an invocation to Triambakam, the 3-eyed one, meaning Lord Shiva. May he bless our study tonight. Sound, can I ask you to push the little white button? There we are. Okay. So we are still in the story of Ravana. May I ask you to chant if you have a copy of the book? And what verse, what chapter are we on? What verse are we on?
Page 61, right where it says, someone said.
Page 69, number 41.
Yeah, 69. But right above that, where it says
All
Sri
right.
Rama said.
We got it. All right, so we're in the story of Ravana. Remember the king who got hypnotized and went off to the village, lived 60 years in the village, came back, and it was only an hour and a half, 2 muhurtas, 2 48 minutes. And he's wants to know the explanation. So we've had this discourse on the nature of the mind and the phenomenal world. So just like the magician caused Ravana to think he was a tribal person, lived a life like that for 60 years. Just like we have a dream, and it can be involved, all sorts of twists and turns. So also, this world is no different. Going on. If you'll help us out, please.
Shri Rama Uvacha Lavano Sau Mahabhaga praptavan kathamapadam. Sri Rama said, how did this Lavana, a very blessed person, meet with this misfortune?
So what causes us to be under that delusion, where we take the phenomenal world as real? Let's see what the scripture says.
Vasishta uvacha ekante chopavishtena lavanena vichintatam. Vasishta said, oh sorry, there's more. Pitamaho Harishchandro Rajasuryasya Yajakah Aham Tasya Kule Jataha Tam Yaje Manasamakham. Vasishta said, it was thought by Lavana, who was seated in solitude, thus: my grandfather Chandra was the performer of the sacrifice or Vedic ritual of Rajasuya. I am born in this family. I shall perform that sacrificial rite with my mind. Note, Rajasuya is a great sacrificial rite performed by universal monarch as a mark of his undisputed sovereignty.
So what he does is, rather than performing the sacrifice, the yajna, in the physical world, I think it's Raja Surya, like with sun.
Suya, without
Suya, okay. I think it's where you give away a lot of your stuff. But anyway, the whole point is, he only did it mentally. He did not do it physically. It's a bit of a literary device here, but let's see what happens. Going on.
Iti sanchitya manasa diksham cha praviveshasaha ahuya ritvajog devan prajwal yatha cha pavakam hutva cha dvija purvobhya datva sarvasva dakshinam vyabudhyat dinasyante swa evo pavane nripaha. Thus, having reflected in his mind, he commenced the sacrificial vows, invoking Brahmanas as sacrificial priests, lighting the sacrificial fire, pouring oblations into it, and giving as gifts all his possessions to Brahmanas and others. The king woke up at the end of the day, that is, before sunrise, in his own garden.
So again, he performs the sacrifice with the fire. He visualizes the Brahmanas and then gives away all his things only in his mind. The gold was still in the storehouse. The jewels were still in his jewel box. The wives were still in the harem. He just did it with his mind. That's enough. Let's see what happens.
Rajasuyasya kartaraha dukkham yat prapnuvantihi tasya dukkhasya bhogaya shakrena gaganattada prahito devaduto hi ramashambari kakritihi mana kartrita phalam bhunkte tadeva na sharirakam. Rama, to make the king experience that pain which the performers of the Rajasuya sacrifice incur, a messenger of the gods was sent by Shakra or Indra, the king of the minor gods, in the form of the juggler. That mind only, which is the performer, experiences the fruit and not the body.
Yes. So the mind did the sacrifice, so the mind got to experience the fruits. So he was supposed to give away all his wealth. So the messenger of the gods came in the form of the juggler, hypnotized him, and he experienced losing all his possessions, all his wealth, all his status mentally. Now, again, it's a literary device, but the very last part of this shloka is the performance of actions and the results of actions. Though they occur to the body, actually the whole drama is in my mind. The body is fundamentally inert. When my senses perceive phenomena, people, places, things, and situations, then I emotionally react to it. Then I make decisions and choices and conclusions based on it in the intellect. So actually, it all takes place in my mind. Is that clear? If you have a colleague and he has a stroke and dies, and somebody brings the body to work the next day, sits him in his chair, going on.
A new section. Ajnana Bhumika.
Oh, this is wonderful.
Degrees of spiritual ignorance. Swarupavasthiti mukti tadbhramsho hantva vedanam etat sankshepata proktam yat gyatvad agvalakshanam. Abiding in one's own essential nature is liberation. Falling off from that is the cognition of the sense of I. That which is the characteristic of knowing and not knowing has thus been briefly stated.
So, what is moksha, liberation? Abiding in the reality of my self nature. When I know that I am changeless, chidakasha, great expression we get in this text. What is this phenomenal world? A light show. What is happiness? When the mind does not extrovert because of ignorance. I want. And stay home when it is profoundly supreme. What is my suffering? What is my problem? Because of ignorance, I think I'm the body and I got problems. That's all there is to it. Any thoughts on this? Going on.
Ajnana bhumaya sapta sapta cha jnana bhumaya bija jagrat tatha jagrat mahajagrat tathaiva cha jagrat swapna tatha swapna swapna jagrat sushuptakam iti sapta vido moha shrinutasya cha lakshanam. The degrees of spiritual ignorance are 7, and 7 are the steps of knowledge. The seed waking state, the waking state, the great waking state, dream and waking state, dream state, waking state and dream, and deep sleep. Thus delusion is 7-fold. Please hear its characteristic.
Okay, so here he's going to go into the sapta ajnana bhumikas. Ajnana meaning ignorance, sapta 7, like September, which is the 9th month, but it's supposed to be the 7th month. And the stages or steps of ignorance. So read the list and I'll briefly go. Does he go through them? I think, does he?
He does, I think.
He does?
He's going through the waking state, the seed waking state. Yeah, I think he does.
He does, okay. So read the list again.
The seed waking state.
Seed waking state, first one.
The waking state.
The waking state.
The great waking state.
The great waking state.
dream in waking state,
dream and waking state,
dream state,
dream state,
waking state in dream.
waking state, and dream. We'll go into each one of these, how the mind is covered,
There's one more, and deep sleep.
and deep sleep. Yes. Okay.
Should I go on?
Yes.
Anakhyam chetanam yat syat tasyavastha hi nunata bhavishya chitta jivadin anamashabda bhajanam. That which is insentient or conscious is without denomination. Its state is indeed new, that is, it has no past. It shares such names and word meanings as the future, the mind, and the individual soul.
So this is the first stage of ignorance, this sense that I'm a person. And it has no beginning and no end per se until we get knowledge. That's the first element of spiritual ignorance. Next one.
Bija rupam sthitam jagrat, bija jagrat tat uchyate parat jatasya jivasya tvayam chaham idam mama iti ya pratyaya swachha tat jagrat pragra bhavanat. The waking state, which is in seed form, that is where cognition is incipient, is called the seed waking state. That clear cognition of the individual soul, which is born of the Supreme Spirit, this is me and this is mine, is the waking state because of the absence of prior perception.
Yes. So when you wake up in the morning, the first thing you get is, I am. And then you begin to get the sense of, I perceive. It was that seed of it when you woke up because of your vasanas. And then all of a sudden your world starts to take place in the waking state. Going on.
Ayam soham idam tatme iti janmantare roditaha pivara pratyaya prokto mahajagrat iti spotam. This is he, I am this is mine. Such immense conviction arising from former births is distinctly called the great waking state.
So beyond the waking state is the great waking state, meaning as I function in the world based on the past, the impressions of prior lives and this life, prior impressions. I am caught up in I-ness and minus. There's people over there and me, and get out of my way so I can have what I want. And we dress it all up. I'm going to just set healthy boundaries. What? You know, give me what I want. Achieve this, get rid of that. That's the great waking state. That's the zoo that we all live in. Going on.
I have a question. So why does he say the seed waking state is spiritual ignorance?
Because when you, for the ordinary person, when you just come out of deep sleep, you don't have any problems yet. But you are there and you're puneet first thing in the morning.
So the potentiality is there.
The reality. Was there a question out there in Zoom land? I guess not. Okay. Can you understand the difference? You're awake, but you're not engaged in the world yet. That make sense? Anybody else have a question about seed waking state, and great waking state?
What's the difference between the waking state and the great waking state?
Waking state is you've awakened, but you haven't got out of bed, you haven't taken your shower, you're not at the office, and you're not arm wrestling the world. See what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You're awake, but you're the pressure of your vasana has not pushed you into the world with all its engagements. Now, sometimes it'll hit us before we get out of bed. Oh God, I've got this meeting at work today. Oh, I don't even want to get up because I don't want to prepare for that. Oh, my taxes are due soon. You know that mind state?
Oh boy, do I.
So you're in the great waking state before you even get out of bed. You see. But sometimes we're just, oh yes, it's the beautiful morning. Waking state. Then I-ness and minus over there, this sort of stuff starts to engage. You know, part of the beauty of Indian culture is they love to make lists. So don't think of these as rigid delineations. There are 7 stages of ignorance. Am I in 1? Am I in 1.5? Or am I at 2 yet? Stuff like that. So, you know, hold it as a gradation. Does that make it a little easier?
Yes.
Okay, so we're now at great waking state. I'm fully engaged in the world and I'm playing whack-a-mole with everything out there, and I'm ignoring my feelings and having 3 scotches in the evening and to get rid of my feelings and all the things we do in the great waking state. Now, this is the next one. I love this next part. Going on.
Arudham athava rudham sarvatha tanmayatmakam yatjagrato manorajyam jagrat swapnam sa uchyate. Whether grown up from it or not, which is made up of that fancy of the mind or castle in the air of the waking state is called dream in waking state.
So, how many of you, while we've been listening to the scripture and I've been discoursing, have had your minds go away and you've been thinking of something else? Be honest. That's called dream and waking state.
I do it constantly. Yes, my apologies. I just was on mute. My apologies.
Yes, no need to apologize. They wrote
No,
a
I'm
book
saying for
about
not
you.
answering. I didn't think you would.
Yeah.
You know my attention issues.
The only,
But yeah.
Justin, stop a minute.
Mhm.
They wrote a book about you 1,000 years ago. You're
I understand. That's what I'm
just
saying.
ordinary.
All right, no worries.
But that's when, you know, you're not present to what's going on in the great waking state. You start to fantasize, you go away, you get into fantasies, dreams, castles in the air, they're called. So we disconnect from the great waking state into another layer of ignorance. We've got fantasy on top of unreality. Going on.
Dvichandra shuktikarupya mrigatashna dibhedatah abhyasat prapya jagratvam swapno ne kavidho bhavet. 2 moons, silver in a pearl oyster, and the mirage. A dream such as these, having overtaken the state of waking by practice, becomes manifold.
So sometimes our fancies about the waking state appear completely real. Let's see if I can give a real live example. Have you ever gotten a text from someone and it's all in capital letters and you're all upset because you thought they were shouting at you? And then you see them or call them up, and you know, what's going on with you? What are you talking about? Well, you texted me all in caps. And, oh, I had cap lock on. You know, something as simple as that. So we have a delusion, an imagination, like fantasies in the air, but we start to take them as real. The misinformation, the disinformation that is so common now in the political discourse is all based on the mind's tendency to do this. So not only do we have a fantasy, we lose touch with the waking state, but then we start to believe our fantasy. I think they call that dream and waking state.
Hasn't described the name of the state here.
Okay, read the verse in English one more time for me.
2 moons, silver in a pearl oyster, and the mirage. But dreams such as these, having overtaken the state of waking by practice, becomes manifold.
Yes, so it's called the dream and waking state, I think. Next verse.
Alpakalam maya drishtam etanno veti yatra hi paramarsha prabuddhasya sa swapna iti kathyate. This was seen by me for a short time, or was this not? Where such a recollection happens to the awakened, that is called a dream.
So you wake up in the morning or from a nap and you go, oh my God, that was so real. I dreamt that Donald Trump was wearing a tutu and dancing ballet. Weird. Did it happen or not? Those of us who are familiar with the recovery community, one of the very common things people have is using dreams or drinking dreams. They're incredibly vivid. And people will wake up in the morning, oh my God, I had a relapse. They're not sure whether it was a dream or it happened. Who's had that kind of an experience? A dream is so vivid, you're not sure whether it's real or not. So that's an even deeper layer of ignorance. So notice what's happened. You aren't even aware of the waking state at all anymore. Now you're in the dream state. You wake up, you don't know. Next verse.
Chira sandarshana bhavat avisprashta brihadvapuhu chira kalanuvritakshcha swapno jagradivoditaha swapna jagrat iti prokto jagratyapi parispuran. By the absence of appearance for a long time, whose extensive nature is not intelligible, but which is continued for a long time, that is, whose memory lingers for a long time, flashing on the mind, even in the waking state, such a dream which has risen like the waking state is called the waking state in dream.
So some of our dreams are so long, so colorful, so vivid. When you wake up, you're not sure, was it a dream or not? Personally, this is where I situate drug experiences. You take acid, do ayahuasca. First of all, it tells you that it's real. It continues for a long time. And then when you come down from the dream, from the trip, you know, I'm convinced to some degree that what happened on that drug trip, well, that's real. So this we call is it what? Waking state and dream?
Waking state and dream.
Yes, waking state and dream. That's the next deepest layer of delusion, of ignorance going on.
Shadavastha parityage jada jivasya ya sthitihi bhavishya dukkha bodhadhya saushukti socyate gatihi. On discarding the above 6 states, that dull or senseless state of the individual soul or consciousness is called the condition of deep sleep, which abounds in the perception of the pain of the future. That is, one waking up from this state perceives the pain of the future.
Yes. So the deepest state of ignorance is deep sleep, where all of the mind's projections are folded up into their potential or causal state. Not gone. If you have a fight with a manager on Monday and you have a deep sleep Monday night, what happens Tuesday morning? It's not like the dream. Oh God, I've got to deal with that SOB again. Is that what happens? What happens in the morning? Lights on, gym. Oh, I don't want to get out of bed. Get out of bed, go to work. Boss is talking. Gee, I'd like to be in Hawaii right now. Can't pay attention. Oh, sure. Get a note from Kaiser. Oh my God, have I got cancer? Your test results are ready. I superimpose. You can see the deep layers upon layers upon layers of illusion and delusion that the mind is capable of inventing. Now, what do all of these states have in common?
The non-apprehension.
They are the knowable. They are not the knower. All the stages of ignorance are comprised of the knowable. And all of them make you think you are an individual. It's not important to remember all these 7 layers. The summation of it all is the mind is capable of layer upon layer upon layer of delusion. That's why I like the movie Inception, I think it's called, one where they're in the dreams and then more dreams. Isn't that the one it is?
Yeah.
Now, it falls short of a Vedantic movie because it posits that there's a reality that's not a dream. Vedanta would say it's all dreams. You can have dreams with it, dreams with it, dreams with it, dreams with it, dreams, and you try to get out. Get out. The way to get out is if you can see it, if you can know it, if you can experience it, mithya, illusion. Don't take it seriously. Next verse.
जगत्तस्याम् अवस्थायाम् अन्धे तमसि लीयते सप्तावस्था इति प्रोक्ता मया ज्ञानस्य राघव एकैका शतशाखात्र नानाविभवरूपिणी. In that state of deep sleep, the world is dissolved in utter darkness. Raghava, the 7 states of spiritual ignorance have thus been told by me. Each one of them is 100 branched in this respect, appearing like various powers.
So there are steps within steps within steps within steps. They're labyrinthian. This is one of the reasons I think in Gita and Kathopanishad, we get the image of the Ashwatha tree. Who remembers what the Ashwatha tree is? Its branches are above. No, its roots are above and its branches are below. Remember that image? It's the upside down tree. That's consciousness. This is this world. But there's so many branches that the mind is capable of. The mind itself is labyrinthian. This is why after a while it becomes pointless to go causation hunting for why do I have this issue? See, you've got control issues. I've got control issues because of my family of origin. I was, well, what about in a prior life? Maybe you were out of control in another life. You were trying to control. What about the life before that? There's no end. There's just no end. So the yogi wants to get out of the mind. Would you flip the switch? It's getting quite warm in here for me. I remember the hot lights here. All right, going on. I think we'll be able to do the knowledge ones today.
Where are the next section?
Yes.
Jnana Bhumika, the steps of knowledge.
Yes, yes. This is probably the most famous section in Yoga Vasishta. So you'll find you can go online and look at it where it's fleshed out a little bit more, but this has all the essential things in it.
Jnanasya bhumikanam tvam adhya nirvachanam shrinu. You hear now the declarations as to the steps of knowledge.
Going on.
Kim mudha iva tisthami preksheham shastra sajjanaihi vairagya purvamicheti shubhe chetu chate buddhaihi. Why do I stand as if perplexed? I shall reflect with the scriptures and virtuous people. The wish that arises thus, preceded by absence of worldly desires, is called the auspicious or virtuous wish by the wise.
Subhecha. This is the first step of knowledge. Having auspicious desire. Being a mumukshu. Having the burning desire for liberation. And its cause is being woke enough to see the inherent defects of life the way most people live it. More, better, different, more, better, different, more, better, different. It's not working for me. Why do I stand perplexed about why my life isn't working? So what do? I turn to the scriptures. I turn to the teachings of the great masters. And I begin to inquire. What's it all about? First step of knowledge. Subhej, auspicious desire. Starts us going. Next one.
Shastra Sajjana Samparka Vairagyabhyasa Purvakam Sadachara Pravrittarya Projyate Saviracharana. Preceded by association with the scriptures and virtuous people, and the practice of dispassion, the inclination towards virtuous conduct is called reflection or investigation.
Vicharana, was that the word?
Vicharana.
Yes, vicharana. Comes from the root vich, which literally is I was taught. Correct me if you've got a different etymology. Means to winnow, to separate the wheat from the chaff. So investigation. What do we investigate? Koham. Who am I? What is this world? How has it come about? What is my bondage? Where did it come from? How does it continue to exist? These deep questions is called vicharana or investigation. It is preceded by vairagya, correct? Which is intense detachment, dispassion from the cravings of the world. Second was study of the scripture, wasn't it?
Yeah, association with the scriptures and virtuous people.
Yes. So, sadhu sangha, if you get a chance to hang with a woman of knowledge and proper scriptural study, that will impel us into the personal practice of investigation. Second stage of knowledge. Suvej Vicharana. Number 3.
Should I go on?
Sure.
Vicharana subhechadhyam indra yartheva saktata yatra sa tanuta bhavat projyate manasa. Non-attachment to the objects of senses by means of reflection and virtuous wish, which thinness arises here out of thought or resolution, is called the state of thin mind.
Tanu manasaha, isn't it?
Mhm.
Tanu manasaha. Thinness of mind. Meaning we reduce the frequency and the volume of thought. Now, why is this important? Notice he doesn't say manonasha, destruction of the mind. He says tanu manasaha, thinness of mind. In the old-timey days, years back, some of you may remember when I had lace curtains in the dining room. I've got shears in there now. Remember when I had the lace ones?
Mhm.
So from the outside, you couldn't see into the dining room. It gave me privacy. But if there was something going on down in the patio, I could go into the dining room and I could look through the lace curtains and see what was going on in the patio. I didn't have to pull the curtains back. So also, just thinning the mind frequently is enough. Just enough to begin to intuit, infer that round of being. The other great image the scriptures use is like the pre-dawn gloaming, the Aruna. Alexa, what time is sunrise tomorrow?
Sunrise in Oakland will be at 6:44 a.m. tomorrow.
6:44 tomorrow. So starting around, say, 6:30, if you're awake, night starts to recede and you get all the purple colors. The birds start making noise. It's not full sunrise yet. It's dawn. But you can see what's out there. Then when the sun rises, the splendor and color of it all is apparent. So also with Tanu Manasa, thinness of mind, we get the Aruna, the dawn, the pre-sunrise light of knowledge. That's enough. Then the splendor of the sun of realization follows very quickly. Isn't that beautiful imagery? So, Suvej, Charana. What was the third one? Thickness of mind, darkness of mind. What was it?
Thinness of mind.
Thinness of mind. So if we've achieved that sattvic mind, or predominantly sattvic, sinful, then we're ready for number 4.
Bhumika Triyatabhyasat Chetertha Virate Vashat Satyatmani Sthiti Shuddhe Sattva Patti Ruddhadhrita. By the practice of the above 3 steps and by the power of cessation of desires, when the mind becomes pure, the abiding in the true self is declared to be entering into being.
Yes. So this is where self-realization takes place. Entering into being. Know who I am. Know where happiness is. My mind can enter into that. Not a person anymore. No, I'm Brahman. Now, what are the preconditions for that? Would you read the list again?
By the practice of the above 3 steps and by the power of the cessation of desires.
Yes. So it's auspicious desire. What was number 2? Investigation. Number 3, thinness of mind. Finally, when we achieve the cessation of our wanting, when the mind stops, peace, then we enter into being. Now, there's a wonderful little book called The Spiritual Teachings of Ramana Maharshi, with a prologue by Carl Jung. And Bhagawan is asked by a disciple, Bhagawan, to which of the stages of knowledge does the jnani belong? He's referring to these sapta jnana bhumikas. Bhagawan says the 4th. And then the disciple says, if that be so, then why have 3 more superior to it been extolled by the scripture? Bhagawan's answer is, these are not stages of bondage and release, freedom. They refer to the experiences of the realized person. And they are not to be achieved by mere will or effort. In fact, if you're making efforts, you're not even at the fourth stage yet. Remember, it says the cessation of desire. They're karmic. So the desire arose in the yogi's bosom to practice this. That's different. Jonesing for. Can you catch that subtle difference? So let's see what these post-enlightenment samadhis are going on.
Dasha Chatushtayabhyasat Asankalpaphalena cha Rudha Sattva Chamatkara Prokta Sansatmik Namika, where the spectacle of pure being has shot forth by the practice of the above four stages as a result of non-attachment. It is called by the name non-union.
Asakta, what's the word?
Asansanga.
Asansanga?
Yeah.
Asansanga, non-joining, non-attachment. So this is when the woman of realization views the world and effortlessly is never confused. The mind does not seriously get engaged with the silliness of the world. Completely detached. Asanguham, asanguham, asanguham. Great, great, great. Unattached. So with this firm abidance in the self, this cessation of desire, when the mind is retired, unattached. Fifth stage. Number 6.
Bhumika Panchakabhyasat Swatma Ramataya Dridam Abhyasanta Ranam Brahmanam Padarthanam Abhavanat Chiram Para Prayuktena Pratnenava Bodhanam Padartha Bhavana Nama Shashti Sanjayate Gatihi. From the practice of the above 5 steps and the absence of the thought of inner and outer objects due to the state of being delighted in one's own self thoroughly, the perception arising out of the effort directed towards the Supreme Spirit for a long time, called non-ideation of objects, which is the 6th stage of knowledge, arises. There is a note.
Go ahead.
The traditional interpretation of the first half of verse 67 is waking up to the world only by the effort employed by others for a long time.
So my experience of it, Swamiji's mind was so deeply introverted. He would hardly ever, if ever, come out. the deepest and most profound expressions of those. We have stories of great saints like Anandamayi Ma. He was just so deeply absorbed in the sound. Of course, when we meet Mahatmas like that, the Shakti just pours through them. Or Sri Ramakrishna, you just start mentioning the name of God and off you go into samadhi. And even form ideas or perceptions of the world. I was asked to participate in a panel 2-3 years ago now. And it was the Westerners who, going back, 30, 40 years, were early disciples of Swamiji. There was a fellow there that I did not know. I later found that he became a Dayananda disciple. But he was one of the fellows that first, drove Swamiji around when he first came to the States and didn't know really who he was or much about him. They were in this hotel and he didn't know what to do with the Swamiji and stuff like that. So just to make sure, he had all he needed, he knocks on the Swami's door and he could hear this television. The old-timey days when you had cathode ray television tubes, if the station would go off the air, there'd just be the snow. None of you are probably old enough to remember this, but you may have seen it in old movies. So finally didn't know what to do. So he opens the door and goes in. And Swamiji's sitting there in front of the TV, nearly samadhi, eyes wide open. TV channel is gone. He's just gone. This guy comes up and goes. Swamiji doesn't even react. Now what do I do? Goes and changes the TV to a working channel and then leaves the room. Yeah. This is the 6th stage. Just go. Just go. Any thoughts on this? All right, the 7th stage.
Bhumi Shataka Chirabhyasat Bhedasyanupalambatah Yat Swabhavaikanishthatvam Sagyeya Turyagagatihi. By the long practice of the above 6 steps and by the non-cognition of division or difference, that state of fixity in one's own being which arises should be known as the condition of going into or staying in the 4th state of consciousness. Note, the 4th state of consciousness is above the normally experienced states of waking, dream, and deep sleep. In that state of undivided consciousness, there is no differentiation of the knower and the known.
Nirvikalpa. So we have stories of various Mahatmas who were in Nirvikalpa for 12 years and stuff like that. There's no longer any perception of the external world. Now listen carefully. Scriptures disagree on what is the highest state. This is Yoga Vasishta's take on it. Those of us who are studying Tripura Rahasya are going to get a very different paradigm. Okay, you can be fond of samadhi, immersed within all the time. Yeah, that's a lower state. A higher state is those for whom there's no inside or outside and are out there actively serving the world, but they never lose this deep, deep union. This is what Swamiji was like. This is what King Janaka was like. So you will see different scriptures extol various post-enlightenment states of the woman and man of wisdom. The important thing to understand is if you're struggling or jonesing to be like the saints, you're not even in the fourth stage yet. It's the mark of a woman or man of wisdom is they've given up all efforts. They've given up all struggle. These post-enlightenment samadhis are the result of merits, punya, tapas done in prior lives. Any thoughts on this? It's a very important section.
Jim, I have two questions actually. This is Fang.
Hi, Fang.
Hello. I have a question on this passage and actually on the one before this too. For this passage, you said that this was the description of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, but what is the difference between this passage and the last passage? Because something like the last one was also a description of the same thing. I'm not sure what I understand what the distinguishment is.
I think from my reading of the text, it has to do with the duration of how long they stay in that state.
Okay, got it. Okay. And the other question is, on the passage before this, I'm not sure I understand the note. It says, the traditional interpretation, the first half of verse 67 is waking up to the world only by the effort employed by others for a long time. What does it mean by the effort employed by others for a long time?
It means that the mind of the jnani responds to the world because of the desires of other people.
Okay.
I can remember my dear friend Isabel, who was Swamiji's attendant the last 2.5 years of his life, kind of his nurse, because he was very, very ill. And he was so frail, and his heart was giving out, and he couldn't breathe, and he could barely walk. And he said to her, "Oh, Isabel, my disciples won't let me go." So he had the sense that his prarabdha had been done maybe several years before. The Lord was ready to take him home. But we wanted him, we needed him. So it kept him in the body. Our desire did. There's a great truth to this because the students create the guru. It is their desire that creates what happens with the guru. Guru has no agenda. So,
Thank you, Jim. That's very helpful.
very good question. All right, 7 jnana bhumikas. Probably the most famous section in Yoga Vasishta. All right, going on.
Yehi Rama Mahabhaga Saptami bhumikam gata Atma Rama Mahatmana Te Mahatpadamagataha. Rama, those blessed ones who have gone to the seventh stage of knowledge, they, the great ones who delight in the self, have indeed arrived at the supreme state.
Yes. So this is the ultimate that a human being can achieve in this lifetime. Now, these are not like concrete stages, you know, is this person in the sixth or is he in 6.2? You know, think of it again as a gradation. My experience of Mahatmas is there is no end to how deeply the mind can revel in Brahman. So you meet one Mahatma, and oh, you can feel they're incredibly deep. You may meet another one. Oh, golly. Ooh, they are deep out there. Any of you know Abhedananda? Another great, great saint. Great, great saint. What makes them great? The depth of their self-abidance. The result of that is the grace that comes out to you and me. All right, next one.
Jivan mukteshu chaishahi turyavastheha vidyate videha mukti vishaya turyatita mata param. In those who are liberated while living, only this fourth state of consciousness exists. After this is the state beyond the fourth, which is the scope of liberation without the body.
So when he says the fourth state here, he means the Turiya. He doesn't mean the fourth stage in the Jnana Bhumikas. So this Turiya is another name for yourself. So this deep immersion in your own nature. That's the best we get while in the body. After that, we're gone. There's a very famous story about Swami Tapovanam, who actually died of dysentery, which was probably very treatable. And he was up in Rishikesh, I think, at the time, might have been Uttarkashi. And the disciples around him said, "Oh, Swamiji, let us take you to Delhi to get treatment." And Tapovanam says, "What, people don't die in Delhi?" And he said, "Oh, but please get treated. We don't want you to die. We love you." And Tapovanam's response was, "You say you love me? And soon I will be eternally united with my beloved. And you want me to stay in this packet of sorrows? And you say you love me?" Very, very different way. Life, world, even the goal. How many more verses in this section?
One more.
One more, and we'll quit.
Bhumika saptakam chaitat dhimatameva gocharaha. The seven stages of knowledge are accessible only to the intelligent ones.
So it's not only those who have high IQs, that's not what we're talking about. It's to those whose minds are subtle, whose minds are pure. Now, I wouldn't worry too much about the 7 stages of ignorance, but I do recommend that you spend some time going over these 7 stages of knowledge. You might try even Googling them, get the story in a more expanded form. Because there's the roadmap of our sadhana laid out in an absolutely beautiful form and a very famous one. Any thoughts? Questions?
Jim, this is David.
Hi, David.
Hi there. So what was it? The 7 stages of it's not in the 7 stages of ignorance. Is that the first set?
Yes.
Those ones were kind of they were seeming very familiar to me. And when we were looking at like the layers of delusion and having kind of dreams and distractions on top of each other. And I just wanted to see like I guess I never thought of my view of the world that way, but it seemed very, very familiar. And I'm curious what your recommendation would be what's the practice when we find ourselves kind of realize that, oh, I've kind of stumbled into these layers and layers of
delusion.
Believing my own delusions. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So here are some things that pop to my mind. First of all, do not worry about falling asleep and do not worry about our ordinary notion of dreaming. There's not a whole lot you can do about that. In terms of all those layers of superimposition that happen in the waking state, put your mind where your hands are working. Develop single pointedness of attention. Stay away from fantasy and imagination. Stay out of regret for the past. I was talking with a person today, and they had a breakup of a relationship. And they were saying, oh, did I make a mistake getting involved with this person? Absolutely pointless. You can't change the past. Stay in the now. Stay away from layers of fantasy to the best that you can. And then stay with the understanding. If you can see it, it's just mind. It's not bad. Just don't get caught up in it. I don't know if that's useful.
It sounds good. I'll try that out and see if it is.
All right. Okay, we're a little bit over. Let's say it. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om. Om. Now, if you wish, Chinmaya Publications puts out a little booklet on the 7 stages of knowledge, commented on by Swami Tejo Mayananda. A little bit different than mine. But if you want to get another person's take on it, I can recommend it. All right. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.